Hi everyone and welcome to Protocol 36, and in today's video we'll be talking about another Marvel Spider-Man 2 leak, which is in fact the same anonymous source from Reddit who leaked a bunch of gameplay details involving Marvel Spider-Man 2 like the Venom symbiote and etc. So if you haven't checked that out yet, the link will be in the card in the right hand corner of the video. But in this one, not only does he expand on the previous leak, he also talks about brand new details and features we could see in Marvel Spider-Man 2 and returning characters from Spider-Man PS4. So before we get started, if at any point you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate if you could drop a like, as that would really help out the channel. Thank you. So without further ado, let's check out what the leak has to say. I was able to get in contact with my source and they explained some things that I actually misinterpreted, and I wanted to clear things up. Just because Harry isn't the Venom doesn't mean he won't take on Venom-like qualities, but that he isn't actually the Venom of the series. The save transfer is entirely optional. The main reason for this is because to allow players to focus on unlocking all the new upgrades and other unlockables within the next game. I also misinterpreted that you can transfer over every upgrade is actually just things like suits and gadget upgrades. Melee damage and health don't transfer over. There will be new gadgets and etc to unlock. I also got a few more tidbits of information. Queens is definitely in the next game for sure. I'm not sure about the other potential areas being added, but Queens is in. There will be no MJ missions. Her role will actually be relatively small in the story. She will still be in some career, at least at the beginning of the story. As for the big bad, it's someone deep in the comic lore, but even my source doesn't know, so I won't speculate. It's just allegedly a composite character and not a straight adaptation. James's role is larger and will have more physical appearances in the game. Black Cat will also make an appearance along with Kraven. Kingpin will also be making a return in some form. The black suit will have entirely different playstyle to regular PR gameplay and is essentially a third playable character. Pretty much all I got. Hoping to find out more soon. If my source gets any more information, I will post as soon as possible. Now before I go over this leak, I just have to say, take it with a grain of salt because this could potentially be wrong. Even if it sounds legit, there's still a chance that this might not be the case. However, that said, we could still speculate and see which ones could be correct and which ones could be wrong, and you guys could let me know in the comments down below because it's really fun to talk about until we get something official from Insomniac themselves. So of course the first thing they mention is Harry not being Venom, though having some sort of Venom qualities. So what I'm thinking is, since the symbiote is helping Harry to keep him alive from the disease he inherited from his mother, the symbiote could give him some extra abilities which could be a side effect, such as potentials and even superhuman strength, but obviously none of these spider-like abilities, kinda like Tom Hardy's Venom, which could work, and it wouldn't get any spider-like abilities until it attaches itself to Peter Parker, which we know it eventually will, since we need that black suit in the sequel. But if this turns out to be true, then my original theory of Harry not being Venom in the Insomniac Spider-Man universe could turn out to be correct, and I would love for that to happen, since I've been saying ever since in my first video that Eddie Brock will still become the Venom in this universe. Could definitely be wrong, but I have a feeling that since Insomniac did set up Eddie Brock and his existence in that universe, it would only make sense to introduce him as a brand new character in the second game, as him and Peter have already met and they were even colleagues when Peter was working at the Daily Bugle. Heck, in Spider-Man Miles Morales, it was mentioned that Peter was working for the Bugle after everything that happened with Dr. Octopus. So it would only make sense to reintroduce Eddie Brock in this universe and pretty much have him and Peter already be friends, and us as players would get to know him even better through his interactions with Peter. However, still nothing has been confirmed. There's still a chance that Insomniac could make Harry Venom in this universe. I doubt it, but you never know. The leaker also mentioned the fact that they might have misinterpreted when it came to the save transfer, as they mentioned that things like health and melee combat cannot be transferred, which we all knew. No games can transfer health from the previous game onto the new one. That's not something you can do, and that's not something I don't think future games will do. So I don't think there was any miscommunication, but maybe there was a miscommunication between him and the source, assuming that what he's saying is true, which this bit is a little questionable. I think transferring suits is more likely. When it comes to the gadgets, in one of my previous videos talking about the Marvel Spider-Man 2 leak, I did mention the fact that it could be possible that Insomniac could let us players transfer gadgets from Spider-Man PS4 to Marvel Spider-Man 2, but now I'm leaning towards the fact that we may already get those upgrades at the beginning of Marvel Spider-Man 2, and that when we're playing through Marvel Spider-Man 2, we could unlock new gadgets, which the leaker mentions that we'll most likely get new gadgets for the sequel. So this bit is a bit questionable. I don't think this bit is entirely true, but then again, you never know, especially when it comes to the power of the PlayStation 5, which apparently its potential hasn't really been met as of so far, because not only did the game just come out, but also the fact that developers are still trying to find a way to get other games be playable for the PlayStation 4, which could limit the specific game for the PlayStation 5, but we just have to wait and see when it comes to save transfer. Obviously, when it comes to the most exciting bits, like being able to see Queens in Marvel Spider-Man 2, which the leaker did say that it's going to be in the game. He also did say in the previous leak that the map will get expanded, which obviously led to many of us assume that we could get Queens and Brooklyn in the sequel, which hopefully happens, as after Spider-Man PS4 was released, that's what many people really wanted, including myself. So I think this bit could be legit because it's a no-brainer. Insomniac would want to go bigger when it comes to the sequel, so it would only make sense for them to add other areas like Queens and Brooklyn. It also goes on to mention that Mary Jane will not have a major role in the sequel and that she's probably in some career at the beginning of the game, which to me is pretty surprising since after Spider-Man Miles Morales, it was said in a phone call between Miles and Peter that when Peter got back, MJ was still in Subcaria, I believe, and that she won't come back until a little while longer. So if that's the case, it could be possible that Marvel Spider-Man 2 could take place directly after Spider-Man Miles Morales. So in universe, possibly a few weeks or at most a month. But again, that is assuming that this is true. Obviously, when it comes to the no MJ missions, I think a lot of us are not really surprised by this, as many people didn't really like the MJ missions when it came to the first game. So it would only make sense for Insomniac to listen to that feedback and probably improve on it in the sequel or get rid of it entirely. Personally, I don't really hate the MJ missions as much as everyone, but admittedly I would rather play as Spider-Man than Mary Jane, so I can completely understand why people don't like it. That said though, I still think Mary Jane may have a important role in the game. She is, after all, the love interest of Peter Parker, and she is one of the most important characters in the Spider-Man lore. So to me, it would make sense if they still have Mary Jane play a huge role, maybe not as big as the first game, but still a pretty major role that would impact the story. Maybe she could also be one of the characters who interacts with Eddie Brock in the game, since they both work at the Daily Bugle, so that is definitely a possibility. So when it comes to the no MJ missions, I think this could possibly happen. They once again mentioned that the big bad is a major character, but they don't really say who, which obviously leads to me to think that they might not know who it is entirely, but they pretty much say that it might be a composite character, so basically taking influences from multiple characters and putting it into one, such as what the MCU did when it came to Whiplash, taking a lot of elements from the Crimson Dynamo from the Iron Man comics and putting it into Whiplash's story in the film. I personally think that wouldn't be the case. Obviously, we don't really know who the main villain is going to be at the end of the day. It could possibly be the Green Goblin, but I still don't think Insomniac would do a composite character when it comes to the main villain. I could be wrong. They might do that with Harry. They might turn him into the Venom of this universe. That could definitely be possible. But when it comes to the main villain, we just have to wait until we actually play the game. I don't think Insomniac are going to reveal who the main villain is going to be before the game releases. They definitely could, like they did with Spider-Man Miles Morales. But if they're going to use the black suit in their marketing and trailers, then it's safe to say that it's most likely going to be Venom. But they could use that as a mystery to make fans speculate who Venom could possibly be, whether it be Eddie Brock, Harry Osborn, or someone else. But I think when it comes to discussing the main villain right now, it's kind of too early to tell, unless they release a trailer for Marvel Spider-Man 2 this year. Apparently J. Jonah Jameson will have a much bigger role in the sequel, which is pretty exciting to see. We didn't really get a lot of him in Marvel Spider-Man or Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales, other than hearing his podcast, which I think was great. So if we actually get to see him in the flesh, that would also be fantastic. Learning more about this version of J. Jonah Jameson is definitely something I would love to see when it comes to the sequel, assuming Peter Parker somehow interacts with him, or even Mary Jane meets up with him, since he was the former head of the Daily Bugle. But then again, since it seems like he's dedicated to his podcast, there's a chance that that might not happen. But I would love to see what kind of role he could play in this game. And if you guys have any ideas and theories of what role he could play, be sure to tell me in the comments down below. Black Cat and Kingpin returning in the sequel is something I'm not really too surprised about. Once again, assuming that this is true, since Black Cat played a huge role in the DLC, especially in the first one, and Kingpin was pretty much this version of Spider-Man's arch nemesis for about 8 years, and he's the first villain we take down in Marvel Spider-Man. He does make a surprise cameo in Spider-Man Miles Morales, so I would love to see what he's up to in Marvel Spider-Man 2. Maybe he's set free for good behavior, or in the Kingpin way, buying his way out, which could definitely be possible. So if this turns out to be true, I'm very excited for Kingpin to return and obviously explore more of his relationship with this version of Spider-Man. And if they do this in an interesting way, it could be something amazing, pun unintended. And Kraven being introduced in this game is also something I was hoping to see, and it's definitely something a lot of you guys said that you would love to see as well, for Kraven to make an appearance in this game. I don't think he was ever referenced in both Marvel Spider-Man and Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales, so there's a chance that this version of Peter Parker haven't even met Kraven yet. But since he's been Spider-Man for 8 years, there's a good chance that he might might have. We know that he met and fought Chameleon, so there's a very good chance that he also fought Kraven the Hunter. But then again, as I always say when it comes to these leaks, we just have to wait and see if this is even true to begin with. As of right now, nothing has been confirmed for Marvel Spider-Man 2. Peter Parker in the black suit having a completely different personality and gameplay style compared to regular Peter Parker is something we all expected as well, and it's also something they mentioned in the previous leak, such as having a rage mode, which we've seen in the Spider-Man 3 movie tie-in game. So as I mentioned in that video, there's a very good chance that Insomniac could be taking a lot of Spider-Man games that features the Venom symbiote and could implement it in their own way for Marvel Spider-Man 2, so that they could pretty much create the ultimate Spider-Man experience for fans. And I could definitely see them adding something like the rage mode, or when they even mentioned the fact that the black suit symbiote will have its own skill tree where players can upgrade new upgrades and skills for Peter Parker in the black suit, which I believe Spider-Man Web of Shadows also did. So I could definitely see Insomniac do this, and if they do, it could definitely be something incredible, as it is important to pretty much make Peter Parker in the symbiote suit feel different compared to regular Peter Parker, such as what Harley Smith and Paul de LOL said, making black suit Peter Parker faster, more powerful and agile when playing the character in the suit, and making his comeback much more violent compared to his regular self. That's something I would love to see, and not only do I hope, but I do think Insomniac will deliver on that. Most of you also did say that you would want a boss fight against Peter Parker in the black suit as Miles Morales, which is definitely something I wish happens in the sequel, and if anyone in Insomniac are listening, that's definitely something we would love to see in Marvel Spider-Man 2. The people have spoken, so there's that, and I think that's always been an awesome idea, and if that doesn't happen, that's okay, but I really hope that happens in Marvel Spider-Man 2. I think that could definitely be something they could market, and it would definitely sell more than Marvel Spider-Man and Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. However, that's all I have to say when it comes to the leak. How about you guys? What are your thoughts on it? Do you think any of it is true, or do you think it's fake? Let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Twitter. If you enjoyed this video, please like, and want more, subscribe. To begin, Protocol 36.